So, oh wait, now we're live. Right, hello, Philly, you're very welcome back to talking to me here.
Come on, Kevin. See you again.
Good to see you too, yeah. So, Philly, last time I talked to you, I suppose, was before Christmas, and things were going very well. You were very excited for the future of Houston Gaels. Very much, you were a club on the up within the region. How have things changed since then? Have things improved, or do you think things have disimproved since then? Or what has been going on since we last spoke?
Yeah, things are going great. Thanks, Kevin. I think it was November when we actually last spoke, and I suppose I had just taken over as chairman then, and we had goals and we had plans and we had everything else. And I'm glad to say that the club is improving and going from strength to strength ever since. We've had our best attendances at trainings ever since we started as a club this year. We were having anything from we say early low 20s to the 30s at the start of the year. Now this time of year it's tapered off a little bit because it's summertime and there's a lot of people away and things like that. But we expect that in the next couple of weeks it's going to pick back up again. We have the Austin finals on the 14th of June, where we play San Antonio in our final Texas game. So I'm glad to say things are going really well, actually. A couple of the things that we said the last time that we really wanted to get. Well, first of all, we have new jerseys and new sponsors. So this is our new sponsor, Kent's, which is convenient enough because I work for them. So it's handy. And this is our away kit, but we're wearing it as our home kit this year, the white jerseys. And it helps with the heat and the sunlight over here as well because it reflects it away from us. We have hurling equipment and we've had our first ever hurling training sessions in Houston since we spoke last as well. That's gone on a bit of a back burner because the football is ongoing at the moment, but as I said, once the finals are over in June in Austin, we're probably going to kick back into the hurling again, and the plan is to reach out to some local lacrosse clubs and see if we can get some of that, the guys who would be used to that movement, local guys involved in the hurling here as well. We've more ladies involved this year, as per what we've said. We still don't have a ladies club, but we have more lady participation, which is fantastic as well. And the team itself is performing. It's at a level it's never performed before. So everyone's getting better. Everyone's improving. Our local guys that we're teaching the game to are getting better with every game and more confident. And we've won one. We lost two, but that's more of a reflection that Dallas and Austin have improved as well, and they have a lot of new young Irish guys out. But we're on course to have our best year. So our best year to date in the three in Texas is 1 win, 1 draw, and 2 defeats. We win our next game. It's 2 wins, 2 defeats this year for us. So that will be our best year yet. So all going well, thank God, Kevin.
Excellent. And I suppose you talk a lot about you're going well and everything's going brilliant and you're improving all the time. I just wonder sometimes, is that coming at the cost of other clubs in the region, or is there plenty of room for clubs to grow and for each club to thrive?
Yeah, no, it would be fairly unique in Texas now because there's such a huge distance between each of the cities. It wouldn't come at any detriment. In fact, we have there's a little bit of cross-pollination going on. So there's a guy who plays for Dallas this year, was with San Antonio for the previous couple of years. We have a guy who used to play with Dallas here, playing for Houston this year. So there's a little bit of that goes on. But, I mean, it's 2.5 hours drive from us here in Houston to get to Austin. It's about 3 to get to San Antonio. It's another 4 plus to get to Dallas from here. And then there's various differences between Austin, San Antonio, and Dallas themselves as well. So because of the geographical spread of Texas, there's no real competition for players. In fact, the more people you can get involved locally, the better it is for the league as a whole, because it's a collective thing, and the Texas League is something that we're, as well as our each individual clubs, we're trying to grow the league as well and get that as a fully functioning division within the North American GAA. We're part of Southwest at the moment, but because Texas is so big, we'll probably end up getting our own division at some point. So no is the answer to that.
Okay, and just on that note then, is there kind of scope then, do you think, within Texas, but also more locally in Austin? Do you think there's room for more clubs? Obviously there's room, but do you think there's there's any chance of that happening in the next decade, I suppose, would be a reasonable time frame. Do you think in the next decade there could be another team popping up in Austin?
It's a good point, and I know where you're coming from. You're probably thinking, you know, if you look at the New York area and Chicago and places like this, they have multiple teams as opposed to just one club. I see it happening. I see it more, in the short term. I see us all developing, maybe each individual club in Texas developing a separate club that might be hurling only, which just makes it easier to organise logistically from that point of view as well. And then you're not pulling from the same pool of people. A longer term, if the economy continues the way it's going in Texas and if people continue to come here, yeah, I absolutely see that maybe the cities can definitely accommodate it. There's 6 million people in Houston. There's almost 5 in, I think it's 4.5 to 5 million people up in Dallas. Austin has a decent sized population of about 1 million, and San Antonio is over 1 million, maybe 1.5, 2 million over there. So they're all big cities. There's lots of people there. The real challenge for us then is the mix between, let's say, expats coming in, Irish guys, or other expats that have played the sport maybe in other places, and the local mix as well, which is something we're really trying to get right here in Houston, because we'll kill it if we just pull in temporary. It's different if guys are here longer term, but if we're pulling in, say, J1 visas, and we're allowed to do that, but we have a quota on who we can get in, and we have to move up a certain amount of divisions. But that's not really what we're trying to do. We're trying to grow the sport and get, as we've said before, get the youth clubs going, which is towards the back end of the summer. That's something that we're going to be doing here locally, separate from the tournaments. We're going to get the youth clubs up, and hopefully that long term will lead to a bigger club, Houston Gaels initially, and maybe, who knows, maybe more clubs here as well.
Yeah, all excellent points. And I suppose, yes, again, carrying on from that, obviously, like you said, there's massive populations in Houston and all these cities in Texas, and there's certainly no shortage of people to get involved. But I suppose the main challenge is in getting people involved that, you know, aren't Irish expats, people emigrating for J1 visas and all that, is to get people involved because they hear about the sport, because of the sport is gaining more awareness. And I suppose working on it, looking at it from a topical point of view, the recent Sky Sports deal that has been announced and the recent GAA Go, which is the live streaming that's going to be available to internationally to people over the RT player. What kind of role do you see those kind of deals, what kind of real effect are those deals going to have in getting people involved in the GAA, or do you think it will have any real effect?
I do, yeah, 100%. I think it's great that Sky have taken it on, because it's only going to increase the scope of certainly, I know in the UK and in and around the UK and Ireland, it's going to help. Over here, well, we've done our own thing, I guess. We've gone with, and the only way to watch them in bars here is with premium sports. So last year we got the games into a pub, which was a little bit outside of the city, admittedly, about a half an hour's drive from where I am, and I'm pretty close to the city centre here in Houston. Now this year, though, we have a new place that's going to be showing them a new bar that's very, very central, and we've already gotten several people signed up for what we're doing, which is a season ticket. So over in America, it costs you $20 to go to a bar to watch a game. That's how it works, because premium sports charge the bar, and the bar then charges the customers. So what we're doing is we're doing $20 a game as per the premium sports, or we're doing a $100 season ticket where you get unlimited access, so you can watch as many games as you want. And that's just started. So we actually got the league finals this year for the first time. We got the football and the hurling league finals here. And yeah, you're right. All of that, so that and the Sky Sports deal and the RTE Go or GA Go online stuff. We're encouraging our players, our non-Irish players, to watch all of this stuff, because that's how they're going to learn the nuances of the sport, and by playing obviously as well. But it's by seeing the top guys at it. That's how they'll really learn to appreciate the speed and the movement and what they need to do to progress themselves to the next level. So yeah, absolutely, it's good for us. It's good for the sport in general.
And you can say it's good, and like you said, there's a challenge there where people can only really watch it in the pubs, you're saying. And certainly when you think about it from a neutral point of view, from let's say an American who's never seen the GAA before, they're not involved in your club, you know, what does the GAA Go deal really means to them, because they're not going to be actively thinking, oh God, I better download the GAA Go app and make sure I catch all the live GAA action, because they've never heard of it before. So I mean, it doesn't really affect them. And of course, in Australia, they have the TV deal where GAA is broadcast live on TV. So they're the distinct advantage in encouraging non-Irish people to get involved in GAA, because they're seeing it on TV, albeit at 3 o'clock in the morning. But it's there live on TV if they want to see it.
I guess
so. From a GAA perspective, what can they do to help clubs like yourself and other people, because you're so far out? How can the GAA help you to get more people aware of the games, other than something like GAA Go, which only really affects people who are already involved in the GAA?
That's a good point, and I think like something similar to what you're talking about in Australia would be a good start. Like, as I mentioned, and you're right, the only way to watch games certainly here in Texas is by going through the premium sports route, where a pub has to get it in. They get charged $4,000 or $5,000 for it, and then it's down to them to collect that money back off their customers. And for us, for Australia, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. For us, it's 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning in the pub, which isn't ideal either. I guess I think that, and I don't want to step out of line here by saying that they need to cut the deal with premium sports, but they are the only game in town in America, unfortunately. So if they want to grow it and grow the sport from a viewership point of view, I think it's going to have to be made available through cable TV. Now, the way I can kind of compare that is the English Premier League was broadcast on NBC this year. They took the rights from Fox, and they did a phenomenal job with it. Basically, this is probably the only country in the world you can watch every single Premier League game live every weekend. It's on your cable system, and they're making that available to everybody. You don't have to subscribe to it. So I think something similar to that for the GAA would work really well.
And I don't want to stick on this topic for too long, because it's been discussed enough, but when you talk about the English Premier League, one thing the English Premier League do is, because they run it like a business, and they run it on what's the best commercial strategy for them, they oftentimes play the games at 7 o'clock in the evening, so that if it's broadcast in America, it's broadcast at a reasonable hour, and if it's broadcast somewhere in the Pacific region, it's broadcast maybe 10 or 11 o'clock at night rather than 5 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. So is that a step that the GAA could take, offering more evening time games? I mean, certainly that would be a controversial decision here at home, to play games at 7 o'clock in the evening just so people in America could see it. But what would you think of that kind of strategy?
Yeah, and I mean, it's already kind of it's happening from a. I know when games go to replays, like Tyrone and Down this weekend, that's on Saturday evening, which I think it's going to be. Is it 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. Irish time? So for replays, they're already doing it. I guess the question is, will they do it for the marquee games, like if it's Dublin versus Kildare in the Leinster final, or Dublin Meath in the Leinster final, which is traditionally going to be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon throw-in, or 3:30 in the afternoon in Croker. Are they going to shift that to a 7 o'clock at night? Probably not, in the short term at least. I don't know if that's something that they need to do for the global market. For the American market, the time difference between Ireland and Houston isn't terrible. It's 6 hours. It's just early in the morning. It's not in the middle of the night, so it's not too bad for us. But it's certainly something, maybe if they wanted to expand it on a global level, maybe they do need to look at something like that.
Okay, we'll step away from the controversial issues of pay-per-view GAA, and we'll step back right into your club. And I suppose, looking at your club, what are the goals? You're the chair. I'm presuming you're still the chairman.
Yeah.
Or has that changed? Yeah. So what are your goals for the club this year? And
so
further into the future.
We're almost at the end of our Texas League run, as I was saying. So we've played 3, won 1, lost 2 so far. So I suppose immediate goals are to win our next game, which will be against San Antonio in just over 2 weeks' time, about 3 weeks' time from this weekend. And that will win us the Shield final here in Texas, which would be nice. We're defending the title actually from last year, so that would be nice for us. Defend that. Then over the summer, our plans are to do what we're going to call a local pub league. So we're going to get a pub to sponsor a small group or to get 4 pubs to sponsor teams, split the club into 4, and just have little playoffs on Saturday mornings, as some alternating with training. So we'll have training one week, we'll have the pub league the next week. And the idea behind that is to kind of keep the interest over the summer, and also to have the games a little bit earlier in the day so that we're avoiding the heat. So hopefully that will bring a little bit of competitive spirit within the club itself, and get a bit of the crack going. Then, as I said, towards the back end of the summer, we're looking to get some, outside of actual game tournament time, get some youth camps set up so that we can start looking at some of the younger players in the area, get the parents involved, teach them the game, and try to get as many of those kids out as possible. It's going to take a big marketing push from us, but we will get it done again. We're going to get the hurling going, and we're going to reach out to some of the local lacrosse clubs, as I was mentioning earlier, and hopefully we'll get some traction out of that as well. The hurling is going to be, because we're not a big club, it's going to be a slower burn to start, and when we go to national championships this year, it's going to be a Texas combined team. But as I said to the guy who's helping me start the hurling here, anything is progress. So the fact that we have hurleys, we have slitters, we have helmets now, and we can train, that's a step in the right direction. And then build on what we're doing with the ladies as well this year, and hopefully get more of those out. And everything that I've just mentioned all culminates Labor Day weekend in September with our second appearance at the National Championships. So we reached the semi-finals last year with a threadbare squad, to be perfectly honest. It was our first year travelling up there. It's a difficult time of year. We got, in a 13-a-side tournament, we had 15 people travelling, and we drafted one other person in, so we had 3 subs. But we played our hearts out, and we had a great time. So the aim is to get one step further, make it to the final, and hopefully this time we can take home the first national silverware for Houston. So lots going on as usual, Kevin, yeah?
Yeah, so you're a busy man as always. You're very much a pioneer in the sense that you're after starting a club in a region that really doesn't have much sport. And usually when people think about America, they do think that there's a strong GAA culture, but because you think naturally of San Francisco, New York, Boston, these areas that have multiple clubs, and especially during the summer they're jumping with all the J1 students coming over. But certainly in the Texas region and in the Austin region, you're very much on a par with the Middle East leagues and those kind of leagues where you're the only club for essentially hundreds and even thousands of miles in some cases in that area of America. So you've definitely done well in that sense in thriving. But based on your own successes, I suppose, what kind of tips or what kind of things do you think that clubs and the GAA in general could take from you and could actually take from me in their own in the GAA back in Ireland? So what kind of things do you think that you've done over in America differently could benefit clubs in Ireland and the GAA in Ireland?
I guess I don't know if we've done anything differently, but I know the key to our success, or I guess the key to our perseverance and just the fact that we keep going every year is just volunteerism, which is at the core of the GAA, as you know yourself. But it really is patience, for want of a better word, because it's peaks and troughs. You know, sometimes you think, oh my God, I have 40 people coming out training. This is it. We're a club and everything's fantastic. And then a few weeks later, you have 12, and you're starting to wonder why you do it, and you know, is it worth it? And you know, why are people not coming back, and etc. From a lessons learned point of view, marketing is key, and recruitment, and just involving the players and keeping them involved. So something I tried a couple of weeks ago, or I'm doing now, and we're doing as a club. I don't just mean myself. I reached out to just the non-Irish players, and I asked them how they were enjoying it. What we were doing well, what we weren't doing so well, and what they wanted to see from the club. And I got some great suggestions back from people, which we're going to try and build into the club going forward, especially going into next year when we look at things like training and teaching guys the skills and how we develop them and bring them on to the next level. So I guess to sum it up, it's really perseverance, patience, and a lot of communication, especially with your newer members, just to keep them engaged and try to keep them coming back.
Yeah, and you mentioned there about you were talking to the non-Irish members of the club and asking them for feedback and what you were doing well and what you weren't doing well. And it would be really interesting to actually speak to a non-Irish person about their involvement in the GAA, especially somebody who's really involved. But what kind of stuff, what is their perception of the GAA and the sport and the community that it brings? How did what do they actually think about it? Obviously you can't speak fully on behalf of them, but you spend a lot of time with them. What do they think of it?
I mean, they really love it. They love the culture, really, is what it is. They're buying into the whole culture, really. From a sporting point of view, we recruit a lot of soccer players, just by nature of the fact that the ball is similar and the running and the style is similar. And what I found is we have a lot of ex-soccer players who prefer Gaelic football than soccer. And I think it's the speed and the intensity of the sport that they really. We spoke the last time and we said, what do Americans in general like when it comes to sports? They like a lot of scores, which the GAA has, and they like a little bit of physical contact, which the GAA also has. And neither of those things are really present in soccer, and it's part of the reason why. And the MLS is doing very well now, but it's part of the reason why soccer historically hasn't done quite as well here as, say, for example, the American sports and even the GAA. When you look at what's happened up in the East Coast, I mean, there's more GAA clubs in the East Coast than there are soccer clubs at this point. Certainly at the level that they play at, the likes of New York. But yeah, I mean, and then outside of the sport, it's really, and that's what the other thing we try and do. We try to have regular social gatherings, and not just in the pub. We're trying to do family stuff as well. We now have one of our club members started a running club, which meets every Monday night, and that's growing as well. Last week they had something like 18 people turning up. So they meet at 7 o'clock every Monday night for a run around the bayou here. We're trying to do things like pool competitions, dart competitions, family picnics, and then of course showing the GAA as well. So there's a whole bunch of stuff outside of the actual sport itself that we're trying to do from a community point of view, and plug ourselves into the community. And that's where you get the longevity from these guys. That's if they can buy into the Irish culture and be a part of the club, not just the team, then that's what we're looking for. And those are the guys that are going to pick up the ball and start running with it when myself and Johnny and the other members of the committee are long gone.
Yeah, just hold on a second there. Okay, yeah, I suppose I was having a chat with one of my friends the other day. We were talking about the GAA and professionalism in the GAA, because obviously with the Sky deal there has been a lot of talk about, the GAA should go pro or the players should get paid. Realistically speaking, Ireland has a population of 4.5 million, and there's very few countries in the world with a population of 4.5 million that could sustain a professional league, a fully professional league. But when we were talking about it, we said, if the GAA ever does go professional, it probably won't be in Ireland. It'll probably be in it'll be in a larger environment. It'll be in a place like the UK where there's 60 million people, the US where there's 400 million people. It'll have to be in a large, or Australia where there's 18, 19 million people, and the GAA is hugely popular there. So we were talking about it, and we thought, God, if the GAA ever does go out professional, it probably will be in a foreign country. What do you think about that in the US in comparison to the MLS? Like, the MLS has been, as I said, struggling for so long, and it's only really starting to make strides now where it's actually becoming more popular in some cases than Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
Do you ever see the GAA expanding to that size or scale in the US?
Well, honestly, it's hard to see that ever happen. I mean, I see it expanding here and continuing to grow just by nature of the fact that there are so many Irish here now. And I've been all over the world, and we spoke about this before. I was involved in some of the Middle East clubs as well, and I've seen how the sport grows, and then it'll dip and grow again because of the nature of Irish people moving around the world. And it'll always be there, though, and it'll always be present overseas. I don't honestly see it going professional, and I don't know a lot about it, but I know from talking to guys, ex inter-county players and who are friends of mine, who know a lot more about it and are more involved, and they don't think they'll ever see the day where there'll be any type of payment to players outside of endorsements or expenses. And I think certainly in country your point on that is right. And when you translate that to someplace like here, I mean, the best example of that would be someplace like New York, where they have their own league and they enter a team into the All-Ireland every year, but they still don't do anything. They don't make any inroads into that tournament every year or into the championship back home really any year. So I don't see the GAA letting that go. I don't see them giving out that much power or that much leeway to a club or clubs in another market to go professional and risk the home market going, well, hang on a second, why are New York clubs getting paid and we're not? And suddenly you're going to see a bunch of inter-county players possibly leaving Ireland to go play for these professional clubs that are overseas. So I don't see it, to be honest, Kevin. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and on that, you could think, you know, you could say the GAA might, but there might be a case where, do you think, where the North American County Board decides, you know, hold on, the GAA is based in Croke Park in Ireland. The main championship is the All-Ireland Championship, you know, but the games are really strong over here, so why don't we set up our own Gaelic Games organisation and we'll govern ourselves outside of Croke Park and we'll take the games on from here ourselves.
I'll have to go. I'll go with the same answer. I mean, I attended the NACB conference, the AGM last year. It was in Indianapolis, and it's very tied to Croker. Everything is geared towards their trip to Croke Park in terms of motions and getting motions ratified and what they do in the US. And and when we meet here, then it's all about filtering what comes from Croke Park down through us. And again, you're still talking about, even at the top level of NACB, you're still talking about volunteers. You're talking about guys who have day jobs and men and women who have day jobs and have other things on their minds. So I just don't see. I don't see it. It would be a mighty amount of work, and it's already a huge amount of work for people to do. It's even bigger if you're not getting paid for it, you know.
Yeah, and even scrapping the notions of professionalism, there's certainly something that strikes me about the GAA being a very Ireland-centric organisation, you know. And when you look at the likes of FIFA, for example, who govern the entire game in its, you know, the game in its entirety on an international level, and then you have further down the line UEFA, and further down the line still FA and FAI and the IFA and all these different organisations. And that seems like a logical way to run it, but the way it seems to be running the GAA, which I think is counterproductive. I don't know how you feel. I suppose I want to get your opinion on this, but in terms of the development of the games at a global scale and in other countries, it seems counterproductive for other countries where the GAA is the FIFA essentially of Gaelic games, but they also are mainly focused on Ireland and not really the other. You know, for example, North America is a county board on the same level as Kilkenny or Cork, and that just seems odd.
Yeah, you know, and it's a fair point, and you know, there's definitely an argument for that. I will say, however, that as a new club and starting out, Croke Park and O'Neill's, especially when you're looking at jerseys, are super helpful in terms of getting your club off the ground. There's structures in place there that help you do it. There's procedures, it's all written out for you. They tell you what you need to do and how you need to run your club, who needs to do what each position is supposed to do. And there's grants available as well, and every club gets, I mean, we got a rebate for starting the hurling this year. Now that came from the North American board, but ultimately it comes from Croke Park as well, because we set up the Hurling Development Fund in America, and they go to Croke Park and they get the support from there. So there's a lot of issues with registration and the logistics of the whole thing and the administration of it. It can be a nightmare at times, and it can be awkward, and every year they try to bring it on to a newer level and take the heartbreak out of it, and it never works, and we always fall back in the same old sheets and the same old folders. And yeah, it's frustrating, but I'd be slow to criticize them, because they really do try to promote the sport so much overseas and help us out so much, you know.
Yeah, and on that point, I wasn't really saying the GA don't support, or even that they're not they don't have supports in place. Like, they are the governing body of Gaelic games. Where I was really pointing towards is, should they be, a bit more distanced from Ireland, in terms of governing All Ireland, and perhaps even it might be just an extra layer of bureaucracy, but adding in an All Ireland county board who would govern the All Ireland championships separately and just leave the GA manage the entire thing. But anyway, we'll leave that for now because I don't think any of us are qualified enough to talk about it. But we'll wrap it up, I suppose. What has been your biggest challenge, or what do you think your biggest challenge will be in growing Youth and Gaels to a point of sustainability and growth?
Yeah, it's the same as when we spoke the last time. Honestly, it's the logistics of just trying to get everything organised in the city continues to be an issue. So I guess there's two things on that. Logistically, from trying to centralise a point of view, or trying to get a facility, and we're still looking for a facility because where we're training right now isn't ideal. That is ours, or that we have rented, that we can say is Houston Gaels, and that suits everybody to come, because we have people that live 45 minutes north of Houston and other people that live 45 minutes south of Houston. That means there's an hour and a half between those two people, so logistically it is very, very difficult still, and trying to find a happy medium so that we can maximize the number of players that we have and that the catchment area. That's number one. Number two is the people that we have, and aside from the logistical side of it, just keeping them engaged, interested, and wanting to come back. And that links into having something specific for ourselves in a good location that people find easy to get to. But it's also on the field and off the field. It's getting the right mix between the team and the competitive nature of the team, and competing strongly in the Texas League, mixed with the social element of it, and having the crack and having lots of activities in pubs and outside of pubs, and family barbecues and picnics and things like that. So it's logistics and engagement, I would say, in two words. Just keeping people happy, central, but keeping people engaged as well. And that's the big challenge, and it's an everyday challenge, to be honest.
Yeah, because you mentioned peaks and troughs with regards to Irish people moving around the world, and how the GA kind of fluctuates in its success. Is there a sense of, I tend to get this sense of anybody I interview who are involved in overseas GA, is there a sense of this time it's different with the GA, like that you're better prepared to build a sustainable GA environment in the less developed areas?
Yes, I would say yes. Yeah, because again, it's linked to where we are globally right now in terms of how many Irish have left Ireland and are now based in places like here, where traditionally there hasn't been a strong Irish base. So there has been a recognition by both the NACB and the GA headquarters back in Ireland that we're growing and that we need to be looked after. So I would say, yeah, there's a definite. Is it easier? It's not easy. It might be a little bit easier because there are structures there in place. It's still a challenge, and it's still tough to keep it going. But I think certainly in this environment, yeah, it's a little bit. It's easier now because we have the people here, or we have some people here that can help us. But we can always use more, of course.
Because you don't want to fall back into the old trend of it gets populated by Irish people, and Irish people are the life and blood of it. And as soon as the Irish people leave or get disinterested, there's nobody there to take it on. And that's kind of seems to be the trend of what the most recent generation of GA clubs and Irish emigrants seem to be concentrating on, is getting people who aren't Irish involved in the GA.
Yeah, and just as maybe a little point on that, aside from that, we have for the Texas Championship that's coming up in a few weeks, we're we're hoping to get Jerome Quinn, who used to be journalist for the BBC, coming out. He's going to spend a week here. He did the finals tournament last year and did a great little 5-minute video. This time he's going to do a bigger thing, and he's going to be here for about a week. But he's got loads of stuff online. He works independently now. He's got a nice little 2.5-minute global GA video link that maybe I'll send it on to you after this, after we're finished talking. And basically it just goes through where a lot of these clubs are springing up, like you mentioned, Middle East, Australia. And in that, he shows a little bit of footage from a game in Italy where 2 fully Italian teams played a game of Gaelic football against each other. 100% Italian, which I thought was incredible, you know. I mean, I'd love to see a day, and it's happening in other parts of the States where they may be second or third generation Irish, but they were born here in the US, so they're American-born players, and they're playing in fully American clubs. So you know, that's something that we'll probably see a little bit more of, and it's something here in Houston that it's more likely to be our future in that regard rather than a bunch of Irish coming out here, you know.
Yeah, because you need to in order to develop the games, you need to naturalize it, and you need to ensure that the people getting involved are going to be there 20, 30, 40 years from now, and that there's grassroots there, because at the end of the day, grassroots is what makes the GAA what the GAA is, and it's, you know, it's a good model to follow even on an international level. But Philly, thanks very much for talking to me. It was great catching up with you and seeing how things have been going for you. Is there anything else you want to add before we go?
No, just as I said, I'll have to give another mention to our new sponsors and also the Irish Society, who we're plugged into here in Houston, have been very good to us this year so far, and it's another example of how we're reaching out here locally. And
the jerseys are very nice.
Thanks.
They're not available online, are they?
We're the 7th best-selling jersey in America. You can believe that. So,
that's actually pretty good. Can you buy them online, or do you have to join the club?
Oh, what's that, Kevin?
Can you buy them online, or do you have to join the club?
You can, yeah, you can buy them on O'Neill's, yeah. They're all available. Really? Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Well, there you have it, guys. If you want to buy a nice Houston Gaels jersey, you can get it online on O'Neill's. So, thanks very much, Philly, and I suppose we'll end the broadcast here.
Thanks, Kevin.